What if the 2022 Candidates Tournament had ended differently? Instead of Ian Nepomniachtchi dominating the event, instead of Ding Liren finishing second and eventually becoming world champion, what if Alireza Firouzja had won the candidates? At just 19 years old, Firouzja was already considered the future of chess. Some even believed he was the one player who could legitimately challenge Magnus Carlsen's dominance. But the tournament didn't go his way. He finished with 6 out of 14, far beyond the winner. But today, we're going to explore an alternate timeline. What if Alireza Firouzja had actually won the 2022 FIDE candidates? And how might that have completely changed the chess world as we know it? First, let us look at what happened in the real 2022 FIDE candidates. It was a stacked lineup that year. In Madrid, the lineup was unbelievably stacked. We had Ian Nepomniachtchi, who would go on to win the tournament, but we also had the likes of Ding Liren, Hikaru Nakamura, Fabiano Caruana, Timur Rajabov, Ricard Laporte, Jan Krzysztof Duda, and of course the youngest player in the field, Alireza Firouzja. Many people believed Firouzja was the dark horse of the tournament. He had just crossed the 2800 rating, becoming one of the youngest players ever to do so. Some even believed this tournament would mark the start of a new chess era. But instead, Firouzja struggled from the very beginning. He lost several key games, including a painful defeat to Ian Nepomniachtchi early in the event. If we look specifically at the results and we click on Alireza Firouzja, you can see 3 draws in his opening rounds. Now, he did start with a double black. So a draw against Timur Rajabov, a draw against Ricard Laporte, and then a draw with the white pieces against Hikaru Nakamura. He then lost in round 4 to Ian Nepomniachtchi, a draw with Jan Krzysztof Duda with the white pieces in round 5, and round 6 a loss to Fabiano Caruana, and round 7 a draw against Ding Liren, meaning in the first half of the tournament he did not pick up a single victory. He would draw with Timur Rajabov in round 8. He would win his first match in round 9 against Ricard Laporte with the white pieces. He would then lose back-to-back games against Nakamura and Nepomniachtchi, 2 more draws against Duda and Ding Liren, with a final round victory with the black pieces against Fabiano Caruana. So Alireza really struggled. By the halfway point of the tournament, he was last place with 2.5 from 7. Meanwhile, Ian Nepomniachtchi would dominate the field and eventually won the tournament with 9.5 out of 14, one of the most convincing candidates' performances ever. Ding Liren finished second after defeating Hikaru Nakamura in the final round, and as history unfolded, Magnus Carlsen declined to defend his title, which meant Ding Liren faced Ian Nepomniachtchi in the 2023 World Championship. Ding won the match and became the 17th World Chess Champion. But imagine if things had gone differently. Part 2 is the turning point. For Firouzja to win the candidates, a few critical things would need to change. One example is his round 4 and his round 10 loss to Ian Nepomniachtchi. In the real tournament, Nepo outplayed him and extended his lead in the tournament. But imagine if Firouzja had won that game instead, particularly round 4. We know Nepo is a very streaky player, and he got off to a very good start. But one loss can really set him back. We would see what would happen in his World Championship in 2021, the year prior against Magnus Carlsen. Not to mention, that loss already gives Alireza a point. If he, for example, still drew the first 2 games with the double black, wins game 3 and game 4, things drastically change. Suddenly, the standings begin to tighten. His confidence shifts. I think what really hurt him was the lack of victories. He was very unsure in those first few rounds. So even if we change the manner of the draws to more confident displays, his momentum completely changes. Instead of spiraling downward, Firouzja gains energy and begins playing the fearless attacking chess he's known for. In the final rounds, he picks up some key victories against Caruana or against Rapport. Instead of finishing on 6 points, all of a sudden he finishes on 9 or even 9.5. And just like that, Alireza Firouzja wins the candidates tournament at the age of 19, the youngest challenger to the World Championship in decades. But who would he have faced in the World Championship? Part 3, and this is all about Magnus Carlsen. Now comes the biggest twist in the tale. Would Magnus Carlsen have really defended his title if Firouzja had won? In reality, Magnus said multiple times that he lacked the motivation to play another World Championship match. But he also said something very interesting, the whole reason we're doing this video. He hinted that he might defend his title if the challenger was Alireza Firouzja. Magnus saw him as the most exciting player of the next generation. So in this alternate timeline, Magnus Carlsen decides to play. Instead of Nepomniachtchi versus Ding in 2023, the world gets the biggest match in years. Magnus Carlsen versus Alireza Firouzja, a clash between the greatest player of the modern era and the most dangerous young talent in chess. It would have been one of the most anticipated matches in decades. But how would this hypothetical World Championship have gone? Sadly, I'm going to spoil the result for you. I think it would have gone in favor of Magnus Carlsen. Magnus is known for his endgame mastery, his positional pressure, and grinding opponents down slowly. Firouzja, on the other hand, thrives in dynamic positions, tactical chaos, and creative attacks. It would have been experience versus youth, pragmatism versus dynamism. Carlsen's universal understanding of chess against Firouzja's raw talent and creativity. Could Firouzja have won? It would have been extremely difficult. Magnus had already defended his title against Anand after defeating him, Karyakin, Caruana, and Nepomniachtchi. But Firouzja would have brought something different. A speed, a fearlessness, an unpredictability. And even if he didn't win the match, simply pushing Magnus to his limits could have created one of the greatest championship battles ever. Remember, in 2018, when they made 12 draws, and Magnus had to play rapid against Fabiano Caruana, he beat him. Against Karyakin, their matches ended up in a draw overall in the classical portion, but Magnus once again clutching it out in rapid chess. Firouzja, the one player, perhaps other than Hikaru Nakamura, who could match Magnus in speed chess, it would not have been so clear-cut. So would Magnus have pushed for more victories in the classical portion, knowing that when it comes time for rapid and for blitz chess, he may have made his match? And even then, if Magnus pushes for the victories, that gives Firouzja exactly what he wants. How would Magnus have approached this match? How would Firouzja have approached it? How does this change chess history? Ladies and gentlemen, if Firouzja had won the candidates, several major things change for definite. First, Ding Liren never becomes world champion. Second, and this becomes now where we speculate, the Magnus Carlsen era may end in a very different way. Instead of stepping away from the title, Magnus may have defended it one last time. And finally, the narrative of modern chess changes. Instead of Ding Liren's historic victory in 2023, we might remember 2023 as the year the prodigy challenged the king of chess. Ian Nepomniachtchi, would he have recovered, having not won the candidates? Would he have gone on to play a third candidate? Where would Gukesh be? Would he be world champion? Who would he be facing? Would he be facing a Fabiano Caruana or a Ian Nepomniachtchi after the 2025 candidates? 2024 candidates, which he won. Who does he face? Where does Firouzja fit in? Firouzja having won the candidates, even losing to Magnus Carlsen, he comes into the next candidates far more prepared, far more confident. Does he eventually become world champion in 2024? Is he the world champion now, had he won 2022 candidates? How would chess have changed? How would it look different? Conclusion: in reality, Firouzja's 2022 candidates was disappointing, but he was only 19 years old. Most world champions don't even reach their peak until their late 20s or early 30s, which means this story is not over for Alireza Firouzja. The next candidate cycles are coming. He's missing this one, but he will be back. Firouzja is still one of the most dangerous players in the world. So the real question might not be, what if Firouzja had won the 2022 candidates, but rather, what happens when he finally does win the FIDE candidates?